Okay, welcome to video 16 in this series on Karen Armstrong's book on the Buddha, her chapter 13, The Enlightenment of the Buddha. This is an anthology piece of work from A-Level Edexcel Buddhism, Paper 4 Buddhism. Let's read it and then we'll look at it. There seems nothing strikingly original about these truths. Most of the monks and ascetics of North India would have agreed with the first three. Gautama himself had been convinced of all of them since the very beginning of his quest. If there's anything novel, it's with the fourth truth, in which Gautama proclaimed that he had found a way to enlightenment, a method which he called the Noble Eightfold Path. Its 8 components have been rationalized still further into a threefold plan of action, consisting of morality, meditation and wisdom. 1. Morality, sila, which consists in right speech, action, and right livelihood. This is essentially comprises the cultivation of skillful states in the way we have discussed. 2. Meditation, samadhi, which comprises Gautama's revised yoga disciplines under the headings of right effort, mindfulness, and concentration. 3. Wisdom, panna, the 2 virtues of right understanding and right resolve enable an aspirant by means of morality and meditation to understand the Buddha's Dharma, enter into it directly and integrate it into his or her daily life in a way that we shall discuss in the following chapter. Is Armstrong's credibility undermined when she says the Buddha said nothing new? Really? That's quite a big claim. There's nothing strikingly original about these claims. Really. I think, again, as we said in the previous chapter, previous section, she is underplaying the important discussion about continuity and discontinuity in religious studies. And she just doesn't consider this as much as she should, and we've kind of gone over this in the previous section, so we'll move on. She talks about most of the monks and the ascetics of North India would have agreed with the first 3. Who are these monks and ascetics of North India? Armstrong mentions, and why doesn't she explain them? I wonder about the word monks. Is that appropriate? Certainly there were ascetics. Monks implies a monastery and a system. At most we have something called the Shramana movement. Shramana means one who labours or toils or exerts themselves for some higher or religious purpose. The origin of the term goes back to the 1500 BC Vedic literature. But it's predominantly used as a title or an epitaph for a group called rishis, for those who exert themselves religiously. And there was a development in this idea of the Shramana movement. Actually, the Shramana movement included, generally speaking, these 4 groups. The Jains, who in a way were a separate religion, very similar, but having this great focus on ahimsa, non-violence to all living things, including insects. The Jains were, believed in the soul, and the Buddha didn't believe in the soul. The Jaiva was their term, not the Atman for the soul. Second group were the determinists, the fatalists. Something like modern-day atheists, but also a bit like Calvinists. They were determinist, fatalistic about everything. And there is a certain atheistic fatalism. Everything is nothing but. You hear that a lot. C.S. Lewis calls it nothing buttery. You're nothing but, Freud said, your sexual urges. Marx said you're just an economic animal. You're nothing but your genes, said Richard Dawkins. Sort of biological determinism, who had a psychological determinism, a sociological determinism, and Dawkins and others would claim other things are what determines you. Well, there was this group at the time who were much like that, the Ajivakas. A third group, called the Ajanas, were the skeptics, and these guys just claimed that they couldn't know anything truly, a bit like our postmodern thinkers today. We can't really know anything. And this group is very important because they influenced developing Mahayana thinking. Nagarjuna drew us heavily from the Ajanas. Think about the Mahayana developing 2 and 3 truth doctrine, that all statements are false. That's a very skeptical, a very extreme skeptical position to hold. And the last group is the Kavarkas, the materialists, the empiricists, who were doubtful we could make any inference to metaphysical truths, and they rejected them because of the lack of proper knowledge and a method of knowing, epistemological method of knowing that knowledge. The same debates we're having today, being worked out in a different culture, in a different time, long ago. It's fascinating, this, absolutely fascinating. But none of this that Armstrong delves into, and it's a shame really that she doesn't, and she treats us perhaps with disdain, that we populist secular people can't possibly understand the complexities of religious studies thinking, even if she knows it, and that's doubtful, it seems. And we read on. Gautama himself had been convinced of them since the very beginning of his quest. Now, I just pause there. This is a very Theravada reading of the life of the Buddha. And this is to underplay the Mahayana idea. The Buddha was already enlightened, already knew all of this. If there's anything novel, it was the fourth truth. If there was anything novel, it was the fourth truth, in which Gautama proclaimed he had found a way, an eightfold way to enlightenment, a method he called the Eightfold Path. Now, certainly the Eightfold Path was new, and she's right. I don't think anybody would disagree with her on this. But what does she mean? There's a development of religion going on here. And Armstrong is avoiding historical critical weaknesses in Buddhism that the sort of doctrinary development may show. But she doesn't want to get into the arguments, polemical arguments against Buddhism that might undermine the faith. That goes against her innate pluralism. She never wants to critique the religion by introducing directly historical critical comments. So what developments, what controversies in Buddhist thought is Armstrong glossing or papering over? Well, let's go through some of these as we look at morality, meditation and wisdom, which she mentions here, and properly so. Let's talk about the debates in morality. The Theravada scholar Bhikkhu Bodhi says the morality he thinks was closer to the concept of discipline and disposition. Well, he would as a Theravada scholar. That leads to harmony at several levels: social, psychological, karmic, contemplating. However, this is a Theravada version of the morality, and it ignores the Mahayana. It's quite, just positive. The Theravada is quite hierarchical. It's quite Catholic. Obey your leaders, remain in the fourfold Sangha, don't challenge anything. It's very collectivist. Whereas Mahayana, you could argue, is a bit more individualistic. The 6 perfections is up to you to develop. The paramitas are way more important. Sila is there, but it's only the second of the 6 paramitas. So there's debates in morality that Armstrong's glossing over. There's debates in meditation that Armstrong glosses over here. His revised yogic disciplines, which ones? Armstrong. This group, Samadhi, of the path to progress from moral restraints to the training of the mind. Well, yes, that's what happens. Yet Theravada, the focus of Theravada is a meditation that leads to Nibbana. Meditation is part of renunciation. Great sways of Vipassana meditation as you rise through the 4 jhanas and you get to the 4th jhana, insight. Whereas Mahayana meditation is perhaps Zen meditation, seated meditation, or it's Pure Land meditation, chanting Amitabha's name, or it's Tibetan self-realization. But none of this is discussed here in and by Armstrong. A last little thought then on wisdom and the controversies around wisdom that she doesn't engage with. Vettner, who was an important scholar of Buddhism for many years, argues this betrays a later development. As a religious studies scholar, he's looking at these developments in religion that Armstrong's glossing over. And what we have in the move from the Eightfold, if I just circle it here, the Noble Eightfold path, which is rationalized further into a threefold plan of action, consisting of morality and meditation. Itself, those two categories represent a development in Buddhist soteriology, Buddhist theories of salvation, which is about the culmination of the debates about where does the path lead to. Well, in the earlier version, perhaps the Eightfold Path version, that category starts with right knowledge. As the Manjuma Nikaya 117 says, it begins with right knowledge. All of these other practices, the first 7 practices, lead up to right meditation, samadhi. Whereas Anderson, in 2013, her book, notes the Eightfold Path divisions. Vettner said it's the threefold path culminates in wisdom. Whereas Anderson says the earlier Eightfold Path starts with knowledge, starts with insight, starts with wisdom. Now, what's going on here? Well, as you look across world religions, mysticism certainly develops, it evolves, there's a progression, and often mystical traditions become more elaborate. They accumulate levels and perhaps writings that the devotee has to go deeper and deeper and deeper into to pursue the next level. And that has been the same throughout nearly all the world's religions, as the mystical end of them seems simple but becomes ever more complex as you look at them. Again, these are debates that Armstrong doesn't deal with, and you need to be critical of her. Section 16.